I was almost the victim of a Craigslist ad. I'm 19F living in the PMW. A couple of months ago, I was looking for extra work because my hours at my regular job were shit. I'm quiet, anxious, and don't have any friends. So I turned to Craigslist. I knew the site could be sketchy, but I was desperate for side gigs, and I hadn't had any luck as someone with no skills and not willing to do sex work. One ad caught my attention. It offered $50 for someone to take photos of a property using either a camera or something above an iPhone 12. I have an iPhone 14, promising it would only take an hour or two. I emailed the poster and soon got a text back. The man said I seemed like the perfect fit and invited me over that same day. What's funny is I actually made a post on R too afraid to ask about if it was a dumb idea, which everyone told me to take a person with me. I didn't and deleted the post shortly after. The house was about 20 minutes outside of town, surrounded by dense forest. It was small and run down, but nothing that raised alarms. The man who greeted me looked like he was in his 50s, unremarkable. He invited me inside. The house was completely empty, no furniture, just dust and dirt. I asked where to start taking photos, but was dodging the question, making small talk and asking personal questions about me instead. My anxiety was building, so I kept the small talk going, but then he began staring at me intensely. I dropped my phone at one point when we eventually started taking photos, though the house, and when he picked it up, he held onto it a little too long before giving it back. Unprompted, when taking photos of the master bedroom, he brushed my face with his hand, complimented my skin. I knew it was stupid coming here, but at that point my blood truly ran cold and I was done making excuses in my head. I made a quick excuse to leave, something about my mom, but when I turned toward the door, he grabbed my arm. I still have the picture I took after the ordeal of the bruises on my forearm. It felt like it was going to get snapped in half. I had brought a small knife for self-defense, a gift from my paranoid mom who would have never let me come here if she had known. Without thinking, I pulled it out and stabbed him in the arm. It was released with the push of a small button. He let go, swinging at my arm with the knife, but I was already running out of the house. I got into my car and drove until I was at a gas station, and my heart was calm. I called the police and explained everything. They took it seriously. I came in to make a report and answer questions. They searched the property and the surrounding forest, but didn't find him. The house turned out to be abandoned, and in the basement they found a pack of zip ties. A report was made, but he's still out there. I call sometimes for updates, but it's never anything of substance. I've never told anyone about this other than the police, not even my mom. I know typing this, I sound pretty unbothered, but that's the first time anything like that has ever happened to me, and I have trouble leaving my house most days. I decided to type this out on here as maybe a way of getting it off my chest, as it plagues my thoughts constantly. To the man who lured me to that house, let's never meet again. Fake policemen. This happened in my family when I was about 5 years old, around 1997. At that time, we lived with my mom, grandmother, and grandfather in a 3-room apartment on the 6th floor in Ukraine, in Kherson City, in a large neighborhood called Shumensky. Those were criminal times in all post-Soviet countries. Not much changed since, though, and I was raised very strictly from a young age not to trust strangers and never to open the door to anyone unfamiliar. One day, someone knocked on our door during the day. At home, it was just my mom and me. My mom approached the door and asked, "Who's there?" A male voice replied, "Open up, this is the police. We need to ask you some questions." My mom first looked through the peephole and indeed saw 2 men in police uniforms standing at the door. Only after that did she open the door. My mom asked them what the matter was and what had happened. In response, they started asking her who was currently at home and how many people were in the apartment. I came closer and saw them. They looked at me, and I got scared and ran into another room. At that moment, my mom sensed something was wrong and tried to close the door, but one of the men put his foot in the way and held the door with his hand, preventing her from closing it. My mom, now frightened, asked again what they wanted, but they just silently stared at her without answering. An eerie silence hung in the air. Suddenly, our neighbor opened her door. She lived on the same floor as us and was about to leave her apartment on an errand. The two policemen immediately changed their expressions, looked towards the neighbor, and she noticed them too. With a questioning look, she glanced at my mom. Then, suddenly, the two men ran down the stairs and out of the building. It was terrifying, and we had no idea what they wanted, but one thing was clear. They had likely bought the police uniform somewhere or stole it and were certainly not real police officers. So, fake policemen, let's never ever meet again. Stranger in the woods when my friends and I were all about 15. I've never told this story fully, but I remember it clearly. There were some woods next to my one friend's house that we used to walk through at the time when we were teenagers. Back in the woods a bit, there was the remains of some old structure, like a small house or something. There were concrete walls about chest high, no ceiling or roof left, and a lot of it was overgrown. We had a group of 4 friends back in the woods during the day, and we decided to try to clear out this structure a little bit. We had a hatchet, machete, some pocket knives, etc. We thought we were some real Boy Scouts out there, I guess, and we cleared out some of the overgrowth. Adjacent to the structure, there was also a circular hole in the ground filled with some bricks. Maybe it used to be a silo? I don't know. But we dug a small hole inside the walls, put some bricks up around it, and even used some mud to hold it together. We gathered some sticks and branches, and by the time it turned dusk, we had a fire going. We were hanging out for a while until I had to go number 2, which would mean walking back to one friend's house. It was maybe a 10-minute walk or less that I'd made tons of times, so even at I wasn't too worried. I brought a flashlight and walked into the woods. I started to hear what sounded like a second set of footsteps, and I stopped. It didn't sound like an animal, and it seemed to stop when I did. I got spooked and walked back towards the firelight where my friends were. I didn't want them to say anything, but they saw me and asked, "What are you doing coming back so soon?" I was inside the walls again and told them, "I think there's someone else in the woods." They thought I was messing with them, and I said, "No, really." And then we heard a noise from close by. It was too dark to see, but sounded like it came from right outside the walls. To describe the sound, it was sort of like someone dropping an empty metal water bottle onto the concrete. We got up startled, dumped a lot of water on the fire, and got out of the structure. The walls were crumbled enough to slip through the side, and we took the shorter, more difficult route through some thick brush to get to the road quicker. We got out of the woods as quick as we could and got to the road, and looking back, someone did come out of the woods behind us. All we really saw was a man in a hoodie who followed us out of the woods and stopped by the road. So, that guy, let's not meet. I was stalked in 2024 by a minor, and it was hell. In August of 2023, I was in my junior year. I went to a trade school in Sumeru County for graphic design. A sophomore named James had taken notice that I wouldn't be dropped off at our home school like he was. He offered to drive me home. I didn't know this kid well. I spoke to him a few times, but other than that, I wasn't buddy-buddy with him. I told him my mom prefers to meet people before just letting my ride in a random person's car, especially a guy. With me being 18 at the time, I told him that if he got into a wreck, I would be responsible as the adult in the car. After that, he didn't really bother me with anything. We still talked and could tell he wasn't neurotypical. It wasn't until my senior year that things got creepy. We exchanged numbers because I would sometimes help him with homework he didn't fully understand and give recommendations of horror channels on YouTube, such as Reddit stories, creepypasta readings, or channels that cover disturbing videos like Hannah, the Horrible, Nick Crowley, Nexpo. Within a month, he found my home address. I never told him where I lived, and he got dropped off way earlier than me. The way the homeschool worked was that all the students on the west side of Fontaine going into Sulani would go to one singular middle school and high school, while students from East Fontaine going into Liu, would go another high school. I never told this kid where I lived, let alone a rough area. I started documenting everything at this point, no matter how big or small. The next following months, if I would fall asleep on the bus, he would tap my headphones, snap them on my ears, kick my legs, shake me, or call my phone just so I would talk to him. In April, he asked me to go to prom with him, and I tried to tell him multiple times that I wasn't interested. And he tried to manipulate me, to which I just lied to him and told him that I had a family event that day. After that, I said something to the principal of him harassing and shaming people to go prom, and he gave the most insincere apology ever. He worded it like he was forced to apologize. I get a phone call the next day of him asking if my sister drove a red car and worked at Sangonomiya Coffee House. I quickly told him no and blocked his number. I went to administration, coupled with the fact this kid would call to ask if I went to the Dollar General, went to work, or if I was at home, told me thoughts he had about killing his mom's boyfriend, how he wants to smash his teeth in, smacking his phone against the window, and tried to manipulate me into calling while he was having a panic attack, and ranted about how my math teacher needed to be gutted because she was overweight, and that fat women are ugly and horrible vessels for producing babies. She's not overweight from poor diet. She has a medical condition that caused a buildup of estrogen. The worst was when he lashed out in anger about him losing his AirPod case and aggressively stomping on his AirPods and literally foaming at the mouth. I went to the principal and liaison after this, only to be unable to talk, and they yelled at me for an hour about how I was being mean to a kid on the spectrum, and that my information, my mother's information, and my sister's information is public information. I started having a panic attack and called my mom. At this point, I was literally vomiting in the trash can of the conference room. My mother was pissed. My mother told me to call the sheriff's office after I get home. The sheriff actually went to this kid's house and told him to knock this shit off, or I had every right to file stalking and harassment charges. The 180 Women's Shelter confirmed that what the principal and liaison did was disgusting and dangerous. So far, I haven't seen him, and I still have his number blocked. Hopefully, I don't see this little bastard anymore. To James, if you see this post by some chance, stay the fuck away from me and my sister. I hope your future general finds out about this shit. Yeah, that's right. He wants to be in the army. Let's not meet ever again. Train station guy. Almost a year ago, I was at an empty outdoor train station at night, waiting for my train. Although it was an eerie ambiance, and I was a bit cold, I didn't feel unsafe. I had full view of both sides and could see from a big distance anyone approaching, and was hoping no one would. However, I spot two men coming to the train station, of course. In my mind, I don't know if they are there to take the train or to do something harmful, especially as a woman. As they get closer, I get more stressed until the younger man receives a phone call and answers it with a cheerful tone, in a language I don't understand, and walks right past me, nodding as a way to say hi, and sits on the floor pretty far for me. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking the second man is going to follow him. However, he stops in front of me, eyeing me up and down. I ask if there's a problem in my language, although not sure if he would understand me. He does, however, and answers me in my language, saying that there is no problem. He says I'm beautiful, and asks me why am I so sad. Although annoying, ATP, he just seemed like someone's dad unaware he's making a random girl uncomfortable. I try to nod along until my train arrives. When he asks me if he could sit next to me on the train, I should have said no, but I just sort of shrugged uncomfortably. I get on the train and try to get away from both men quick, but sure enough, the older man sits beside me and the younger one in front of me. It's okay, I think. I just have to get to my destination. The older man starts trying to make eye contact with me, and I try to look away. He keeps telling me I'm beautiful and asking me questions about my life, to which most of them I don't answer truthfully. But things started to get weird. He started telling me I could get any guy I wanted, started telling me that God wants me to be pregnant and that it's time for me to. Tells me I'm truly beautiful over and over again, and that race doesn't matter. We are different races. He tries to put his arm around me and things like that for quite some time. He then asks me if, when we arrive, I want to go with him to insert nearby village. I say no, and he keeps insisting, saying I have to be free and be happy, and I keep saying no. He then changes the subject, asks me why I'm so sad. I say I'm not. He says, yes, you are. I say no, and this goes back and forth until he says that yes, I'm sad, and he knows because he's a medium. He knows I just need to be free and get a man, and that if I go with him, he can help. I tell him no, and that my dad is waiting for me. He asks, is your dad strong? To which I reply, very. He then seems to calm down a bit, and I text my friend explaining the situation. We're talking, and he asks me who I'm texting. I just ask why he wants to know, and he says that I should give him my socials in case I need his advice. I tell him no, and that I don't feel comfortable with that, and he insists that I should give him his number, and that he's really good at helping women. This is when my friend calls me. Salvation. We talk until I get out of the train. I walk until the parking lot and don't seem to see the guys of the train nearby. I go to hide myself somewhere to call my dad, and as I'm looking at my phone, I feel someone hug me. It was the train guy, alone for some reason. I push him off and clench my fist, ready to punch, and he tells me he just wants to say goodbye. With this weird tone, he starts getting close to me, pursing his lips. I push him off, run, and call my dad. I broke into tears as soon as I was safe. I truly think that man could have done something horrible to me that day. Please, let's not meet again.
Thank you so much for watching. New stories every single day, perfect for sleeping, doing chores, and giving you something a little interesting to pass the time. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a potentially great story, and leaving a like helps the channel out a ton.